So, Corey, we have a kind of a specialty question that we get from time to time here at Loveology about PTSD, and it's often from the spouse that's wondering, does my does my wife have PTSD? What can you tell that person that's kind of scratching their head and thinking, I don't know if it sounds like it might be happening from what I understand. Guide us a little bit, would you?
Yeah, it's such a scary question, right? It's very scary to look at your spouse and wonder if there's some extra help and support that you might be needing, and they might be struggling with something, especially if they're struggling with something and there's resistance to getting that help. And so it's a very scary question. So PTSD, we often say, is post-traumatic stress disorder. Sometimes you're going to hear it as post-traumatic stress or syndrome, or there's a variety, and a lot of us in the helping professional are having a hard time switching over to which acronym we're going to use, but you're going to hear it
Yeah.
called several different things. I work with military and first responder couples, so we tend to see a lot of trauma, not with everybody, but we tend to see trauma because of combat or because of things that they're seeing on the streets. And so there's a couple of red flags that you can just be looking for or thinking through as you see your spouse struggling with different things.
So, what are these red flags we're looking for?
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say, especially with military and first responders, there's what I like to call combat stress fatigue. And my husband actually came home with combat stress, and it wasn't quite PTSD, but it felt like it was a little bit on the line. And so, what I saw and what I typically see with those that are maybe on the edge, maybe it's a blurred, but not quite well into PTSD, is you see some avoidance tendencies. You see, like, avoiding most military and first responder service spouses are going to avoid things like crowds, loud noises. They're going to have a reaction to that. That doesn't necessarily mean they have PTSD. It means they've habitually been trained to be hyper alert in those situations, not necessarily a bad thing. But if you have a spouse that is avoiding going out to a restaurant, avoiding getting in the car and enjoying life activities that are normal family activities, and they're starting to not enjoy the life that they should be enjoying because they're avoiding certain situations, that's
Yeah.
a little bit of a red flag. So when
Where
you
it's
have,
really impeding their lifestyle, the things that
yes.
we would normally do, they're going, no, I'm not into that anymore.
And that's a great word, impeding. So you have the normal life experiences of going to a kid's band concert or going to a kid's game or going out to dinner with friends. And so if we're starting to avoid some of those things that really are meant to bring life and joy to the situation, that's a little bit of a red flag. You'll often find a startle response, a fear of death, a fear of when we use the word avoidance, I had several that were avoiding hospital, like they couldn't even go to the hospital setting or even outside of a hospital building because they had had a traumatic experience in a medic or an OR situation. Or perhaps they don't want to go to a certain area of town because of some kind of trauma that they experienced. When you have that avoidance, what you'll typically see is it grows like a cancer. That one thing that kind of was the triggering event takes on like other kind of pieces. Like we're not just avoiding, let's say, that area of town, but we're also avoiding anything that reminds us of that area of town. And now
Mhm.
we're expanding the radius even more. And so if you see that it's kind of growing like a cancer, where it once was just we're going to avoid a certain area of town, and now we don't want to leave the house, that
Yeah.
is a big red flag that we're starting to have some of those symptoms that are impeding on our life and some of our daily functioning. That the
Yeah.
whole point of getting help is to bring that daily functioning back where we can experience life again. Doesn't mean we're going to forget the trauma, doesn't mean that it's going to fully be erased from our memory, doesn't mean that we're going to enjoy going through that area of town. But a
Yeah.
professional can help kind of close in that radius back again so it's not taking over and creeping into all areas of their
Yeah.
life.
Those are two very important red flags. So let's say the spouse is watching this, that's suspect, that's wondering this question. They go, "Uh-oh, check, check. Yeah, he's fulfilling both of those boxes. What do they do next? They need professional help for that person, right?"
Yeah, and there's several ways that you could go with this depending on how supportive your spouse is to getting that help. And remember, especially if it's military, sometimes even first responder, there's a huge stigma attached sometimes to getting help. There's sometimes red tape that comes into play with actually getting that care. So, first of all, I would just say, as a spouse, make sure that you're getting the help that you need in case you have a secondary traumatization or compassion fatigue or just being around the dynamics that are happening in your home. You have incredible influence in making sure that you are taking good care of yourself as you navigate how do I have those conversations. But
Yeah.
if you are able to have those conversations with your spouse, navigating through like what would it look like to get that help? Vision cast, what would it be like for us to get your life back, our life back? What are those things that you wish that you could do that you feel like life is kind of closing in on me, and this memory that I have is now running my present instead of it being safely in the past? And
Yeah.
that's another red flag that you're going to see, is that their past is invading their present, and because it's invading your present, you're having trouble moving forward into your future. And we want to
Yeah.
get everything back in its place where it's supposed to be, where you can be in the present, and if you get triggered, you're still able to stay in the present. But the bigger the trauma and the more significant of an impact it's having on your life, the more help that that spouse might need, the more time that they might need to invest in care to kind of get their life back and reduce those symptoms. But it's definitely possible.
And the good news here, Corey, is that there is help. We have lots of research. We know how to treat this issue. And so don't get discouraged if you feel like, oh man, my spouse, I think, has this. So, Corey, thanks so much for your guidance on this. Super, super helpful.